Hey everybody, welcome back to the I Play 2 podcast. I'm your host, Rob Adler. This week, Stetson assistant basketball coach Joey Gruden joins the show. Growing up, he excelled in baseball, football, and volleyball. At the University of Dayton, Joey was a walk-on on the basketball team where he was a part of 3 NCAA Tournament teams. After graduation, he's been the head coach at both the AAU and prep school levels, and now gets to go to the NCAA Tournament with Stetson. His uncle, Jon Gruden, won a Super Bowl as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and his father, Jay Gruden, spent several seasons as the head coach of the then Washington Redskins. Coach, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. My first question is, what's it like to go dancing?
It's always a great feeling to go dancing. I mean, there's only 68 teams out of 300 something, so to be in that elite group, it feels pretty good.
In the conference semifinals, what was the heart rate like? Because that was a nail-biter and a 1-point win.
Definitely an emotional roller coaster. It felt like I played 40 minutes, and I was exhausted after that game. It was one of the best basketball games I've ever been a part of, that's for sure.
As a coach, how do you get your players ready to basically come back after such an emotionally draining win?
Our coaching staff did a great job just celebrating that until about midnight is what we always say. Once the clock hits midnight, it's time to focus on the next game. It was a very emotional game coming back like that and winning. But, I mean, I think our whole team had championship or bust on our minds all season. So I think that was the main goal, and we did a good job coming back and get ready for the next game.
You beat Austin Peay to get to the tournament, and Austin Peay has one of my favorite radio calls of all time with Flies Open, Let's Go Peay. But what was it like to play them, kind of take the lead, and then Austin Peay kind of chip away and have a chance to tie at the end?
Going into that game, they were one of the hottest teams in our league. They had really good players. They even brought a really good crowd in. They had their band. They had a loud group of people there chanting, "Let's go Peay" the whole game. So the atmosphere was electric. We knew it'd be a tough game. We played them once earlier, actually at home, and it was another tough game. We beat them by like 1 point. So we knew going into it, it'd be a tough game no matter what. But our guys, kind of like the first game, just kept battling, and we found a way to win at the end.
What about Blackman's performance? The 43-point night was unbelievable.
That was one of the most special performances I've seen all year by anyone for sure. I think he had 9 points at halftime, so he scored 34 in the second half alone. He's just a special player. I think everyone knows it. His ability to score is up there with anybody in the country. He scored 33 at Cincinnati, had a big game for UCF. So he's done it against not just teams in our league, but other top teams in the country. For him to showcase that on ESPN2 in the championship game was definitely a special thing for him and definitely helped our team get over the hump and win the game.
Going into the NCAA tournament, you'll be an underdog. What's that kind of like? Because when you guys go on the road early in the season, whether it's UCF, UNLV, you're kind of viewed as that as well. You played Houston too. How do you approach this in kind of a one-game knockout scenario?
Kind of like you said it, Coach Jones did a great job, as well as our staff, planning our non-conference schedule and playing some of those top teams in the country, going to play number 1 Houston at Houston. And like you said, UNLV, UCF, played at Charlotte, at FIU. So we've played a lot of tough teams on the road to prepare us for these moments. And I don't think our guys will be scared of the moment, which is half the battle. So going into the game, I think we'll be confident and we're okay being the underdog. We've been there a lot of our season games. So we're comfortable being those guys and we'll be confident and ready to go.
From talking to many coaches in the past across multiple sports, often coaches will say a team learns more from a loss than a win. Was there a loss this year that this team learned from and perhaps maybe turned a corner?
That's a great question. It's funny you say that. Coach Jones always says that too. And we never lose, we learn. But it's always nice to learn and a win, obviously. But it wasn't like that hoorah moment, but definitely going to play at Houston and playing a top 3 team in the country at the time and just seeing what it takes to play at that level. I think it really opened our guys' eyes just how hard and how tough you got to compete each possession. So I think that game especially stings out to me. That prepared us for the next few games. If we didn't play that game, maybe we don't go and beat UCF. So that game definitely helped us. But our whole non-conference schedule is tough. We played a lot of good teams. And then our league is underrated too, I think. So like you said, each loss is a lesson, and we took a few of those, but each game we learned something new and helped us to win when it mattered.
For Listeners who may not be familiar with the conference, many basketball fans will remember Florida Gulf Coast and Dunk City from about a decade ago. When you think about that, knowing they're from your conference, what makes you think you can be the next Cinderella story in the NCAA tournament?
It's tough. Not everyone can be a Cinderella. There's a lot of teams that don't get to do it, but with our talent on our roster and our players, we've been together now for a couple years. We're a little bit older and we've been there before. We've played the battles. We have really good guards, which I think is important in the tournament. We have a really good big man in Aubin Gadaretsi, and we have some good depth coming off the bench as well. But as underrated it is, I think our team is really connected off the court. We really are a brotherhood. They all loved each other. They all love being around each other, which I think is huge. They don't care who scores. They just want to win the game. And one night it might be this guy. The next night it might be another guy. So I think the unselfishness, the brotherhood, and the talent, we can beat almost anyone we play with. So it'll be exciting to see who we match up with and go from there.
Taking a little bit of a step back here, how did your love of basketball come to be since you were from such a football-dominated family?
I always played both growing up all the way until my senior year of high school. I even played football. I had a tough time deciding what I wanted to do, and it was kind of a weird story. I went to go to University of Dayton to play football, and when I got there, when it was the first day of practice, I decided I love basketball more. I'm not doing football anymore, so I quit before I even stepped on the football field. Tried out for the basketball team, made it, and the rest is history. So I've always really loved both. I think I always lean towards basketball a little more. It just fits my personality, and I'm not a bang my head against the wall kind of guy. I'm more of a basketball kind of guy with tactics, running, shooting, all that good stuff. But just being competitive in a sports family, I always loved playing sports, and I was always drawn to basketball more growing up.
Just how competitive was the family with your siblings, with your uncle's family? I've read some stories that there were some pretty knockout, drag-out battles.
Oh, yeah. Every summer we'd go, my family and my uncle's family, to a vacation spot. One example, we went to South Dakota one summer and kind of in the middle of nowhere. We would just like to get away and see the wilderness and hang out in a house together with both families. And he has three boys and I have two brothers, so we had three boys. And every day, all we wanted to do was go to the local park and play football. So we played 3-on-3 football, and every game it would lead in tears. Someone was coming out crying or hurt. So the competitive nature was there. Then you get home and you play a board game, and then someone cries during the board game. So it was always competitive, no matter what we did, just being with all boys. I think that definitely molded me to be a coach and stay in sports.
What was the favorite board game playing growing up or even now?
We used to play anything that was competitive. So a lot of Monopoly. My dad would make up games, and my uncle, we used to do this thing called the question game where they would just ask random questions like sports trivia, and it was first one answers wins, you're safe. It was competitive. It get down to two, and the loser always had a punishment. So it was definitely always competitive, and no one wanted to lose. So loser was coming out crying. So it was always competitive.
Two things. One, I want to bring you to bar trivia with me. And the second thing is, what was the punishment if you didn't win?
All right, so this is gross. This one sticks out most. Is my older brother lost. We were in Costa Rica, all six of us, at a restaurant. We ordered this big fish. It was pretty raw fish, and the loser had to eat the fish eyeball. So my older brother lost, and that was probably the worst punishment that stands out to me, was him having to eat that fish eyeball, and he did it. There was five other boys there pointing at him and yelling at him to have to do it, so he was brave enough to do it, so he ate a fish eyeball.
My grandmother used to suck on those eyeballs a lot. It was disgusting.
Definitely.
What was the trip like to Costa Rica? Just because it's a foreign country, different environment.
Every summer we try to do something different. We didn't go to your normal vacation spots. We went to South Dakota, we went to Montana, we went to Costa Rica. Costa Rica was awesome, going to the zip lines and hanging out at the beach and just trying different foods and stuff like that. Obviously, we were fortunate to do stuff like that growing up. That was a really fun trip. They were all fun trips, but no matter where we were, even in Costa Rica, we had to find a field to go play football and play some sports. So very competitive family, but they were always very memorable trips. That's for sure.
Out of, let's say, the nine boys, you, your brother's cousin, etc., who is the best athlete in the family?
Me being competitive, I like to say myself. John's oldest son was very athletic too. He's actually a strength coach for the Raiders. He's yoked. He's about 5'7", 5'8". He competes nationally in weightlifting competitions, but he was a really good football player. He played at Lafayette. He's a good athlete in football, and I think I was the best athlete in basketball. So a lot of good athletes, especially growing up as kids. We were all really good and competitive. So it'd be hard to say, but I'm going to say myself, just being competitive.
Who were your basketball idols growing up?
Ooh, that's a good question. I loved Allen Iverson growing up as a really young kid. As I got older, I loved Dirk Nowitzki. He was awesome to watch. I started liking James Harden a lot until he kind of bounced around a little too much for me. But I just like watching tons of different basketball players and all different teams. I never really had a favorite team, just love watching in general. And I've always been drawn more to college basketball more than NBA. So tough to say, but there's been a lot of good ones throughout the years.
As a Mavericks fan, I love for you to say Dirk Nowitzki because that warms my heart.
Yeah, he's had a Dirk Nowitzki phone case for about 3 years. I love Dirk. He was fun to watch.
Quick story. I interviewed Dirk once about 20 years ago, and he was getting ready to walk out, and Sean Bradley walked in, and you have no idea how tall 7'6" is when you're somebody as short as me, and you see him stand next to a 7-footer and is a head taller.
That's hilarious. But I heard Dirk is such a nice and funny guy too, so I'm sure that was a great interview.
His English wasn't as polished then as it is now. He was very good. I will tell you though that Sean Bradley, and it's not somebody you would necessarily think was hilarious, was hilarious.
That's funny. That's good stuff.
You mentioned you were more of a college fan. Were there college players that you watched growing up as a kid?
Weirdly enough, I love watching Cincinnati play growing up, like Lance Stevenson. I don't know why he stands out to me, but I love that team when he was on it. Adam Morrison at Gonzaga, I love watching him. I know, weird couple to be favorites, but those were two I really liked watching. Obviously, Jimmer Fredette was fun to watch. There were so many good ones. Carmelo Anthony, those were all my top four right there. They were all fun to watch, and I just love cheering for them. I don't know why, but I was drawn to those guys.
Well, Stevenson and Morrison, I could totally see because Stevenson from the intensity in the defensive side, and Morrison because he was one of the best sharpshooters in the nation at that point.
And then Jimmer was obviously Jimmer. He was crazy to watch. So many good ones. I mean, so many teams, so many coaches, so many players. It's been awesome.
So, how young were you when you first started playing basketball?
I remember playing in second grade when I first started getting competitive and loving it. So I'd say 6 or 7 years old.
As you started growing up and realizing that you could be really good, when was the first thought you had that, hey, maybe I could do this at the D1 level in college?
I don't know. I never really thought of it like that. I just love to play. I was always one of the better players on the team, and I love to win. I didn't really care about points as much as I probably should have. Looking back on it, probably should have been a little more selfish. Get my numbers and get recruited, as kids like to say nowadays. But honestly, not till my junior year of high school, I thought I could probably play this in college. Playing varsity for the first time, moving to a different state and leading a team and doing pretty well. So my junior year of high school, I think I really took off, and that's when I really started loving the game. And then playing AAU basketball in the summers, just competing against top level guys, and I was never scared of them and thought I was just as good as a lot of them. So I think junior year of high school is probably when I realized I could probably do this in college.
You mentioned AAU basketball, which you've played and coached at. For people who aren't as familiar with the AAU basketball and the travel schedule, can you kind of talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, AAU basketball's gotten huge, especially probably in the last 5, 10 years. There's different circuits now, like Nike has one, Adidas, Under Armour, Puma has one this summer. So those are probably the top ones most people know about. They travel around in the summer. They play almost every weekend in the summer, and there's probably like 5 or 6 live weekends, I like to call it, where all the coaches come out and watch, and that's where they get a lot of exposure. Teams are stacked. Some teams have 5, 6, 7 Division I guys on a team, and they're playing against another team of 5, 6, 7 Division I guys. So AU basketball is a great way for kids to get recruited. There's a lot of scam AU programs out there, though, so don't get fooled by those. But if you find the right team, the right fit, it can be really good for your college exposure. So, I mean, it's definitely taken off and going to keep taking off, I think, in the future.
For you as a player, what made your team the right fit for you?
I played on a couple AU teams. My first AU team, I tried to join a team that was really high noticed, and I thought it'd be good for me, but I was seventh, eighth, ninth man coming off the bench, not really getting to play and not getting to showcase what I can do. So I actually dropped down and played on a lower level team, but I got to start, be one of the better players, and I wasn't in the top tournaments, but being able to play against the top teams and compete with them was a good way for me to get seen. So it's all about fit, I think, for kids nowadays. A lot of kids just want to play on the best team and be noticed, but if you're not playing and you're on the best team, you're not really being noticed anyway. So I think it's important for kids to realize go somewhere you can play and showcase what you can do.
What was the recruiting process like for you? Because you were a basketball fan, but you originally went to Dayton to go to football.
I think a lot of college basketball coaches probably stayed away from me just because I played both sports, and they probably assumed I wanted to play football without even talking to me, just because, like you said, the family and the last name, and I played both. So I think a lot of Division twos and NAI schools stayed away from me just because they probably assumed I wanted to play football. But I had a lot of Division III schools reaching out about basketball, but the Daytons of the world, the Butlers of the world just wanted me to come play football. I was probably too skinny to play Division I football, so that's probably what hurt me. But I don't know. I love both. I really had a hard time deciding in high school. If you asked me during the fall, I would have said I want to play football in college. If you asked me in the winter, I probably would have told you I want to play basketball. So it was always tough for me to choose. But going to Dayton, I thought I could play football or I could try out for the basketball team and hope for the best. But if I didn't make the basketball team, at least I could be a manager for a high level Division I program, learn from a really good coach and go from there. So it worked out. I got lucky. Coach Archie Miller took a chance on me and let me play. So I'll always be grateful to him. And I kind of got lucky being able to go to Dayton and play basketball, but I'm glad I did, and it helped me to get where I am today.
Going to Dayton and the fact that your uncle John also went to Dayton, was there any pressure of having the Gruden name, or were people making assumptions about who you were?
A little bit. I mean, I think people definitely knew who I was a lot more than the average kid on campus just because he did go there, but not so much in the basketball world. That's kind of the beauty of playing basketball is most of the basketball guys don't really know or care about the football guys. So it kind of worked out. And people just let me be me and do my own thing, which was good. So it worked out on both ends. But I think the football coaches are probably a little disappointed I didn't play football.
Well, I would imagine so. Again, the family name is just so associated with the sport.
Right. He definitely goes back and tries to help out Dayton when he can. So they're probably definitely a little sad, but it's okay. It worked out for both parties.
What's it like to share that bond with your uncle that you guys share an alma mater? Because not everybody in a family gets to go to the same school.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, we talk about places we lived and can talk about the restaurants we ate at and the gyms and all that good stuff and local bar on campus, just small stuff we could talk about. We can share that. He probably pushed me to go there more than the other schools. So it worked out though. Him having such a great experience there probably pushed me over the edge, decided to go to Dayton last minute. I had a really hard time deciding where I wanted to go. And just to have someone in my family that I trusted that went there and loved it gave me that last little push to go to school there and trust it.
What other schools were in the running up until that point?
A lot of smaller Division III schools. I almost went to Denison University in Ohio, if you've heard of that. I was going to try to go there and actually play both sports. I was really intrigued in that, but glad I didn't do it. That would have been a lot of work playing two sports in college. So I'm glad I chose Dayton and it worked out.
Believe it or not, at ESPN, I worked with two people that went to Denison.
Really?
One person now works on a lot of college sports, a lot of lacrosse stuff. Somebody else that I worked with at ESPN, now just an independent producer, he also went to Denison.
It was a beautiful campus, beautiful school. I really was close to choosing Denison. Great campus.
Do you try out to be a walk-on, or how does that whole process work?
Depends on the school. Dayton was tough. Kind of told my high school coach I really wanted to walk on there, and he called one of the assistants that he knew that was at Dayton. So I actually tried out year one. I didn't make the team my freshman year. It was like a private tryout. It was like 6 or 7 kids that were all pretty good, and I got cut. And from that moment on, I decided I'm going to work really hard for one more year, try out next year, and see if I can make it. I knew deep down inside I was good enough to play and probably better than the kids they took. Come to find out next year, it was more so because of my class schedule time. I had classes during practice. I didn't know that. Looking back, I would have changed my whole class schedule around if they knew that. So I didn't make it my first year, worked hard and tried out again year two, and I made it my second year and then played for 4 years. So it worked out.
Kind of explain a little bit what the role of the walk-on is on the team, because it's a pretty important role, especially when it comes to, I would say, I guess, mimicking the opponent as a de facto scout team.
It kind of depends on the year and the team. I've been part of different teams that use walk-ons differently. But when I was a player, my first year, we had like 3 guys get kicked off the team and we had 7 scholarship players. It felt like I was on scholarship. So I did everything. I would practice every weightlifting, every study hall, I was in every drill, I was in every scrimmage, everything. So I played a ton. So everything the main players do, I did. Obviously, I just had to pay my way to go to school, but it's tough being a walk-on. You have to do all the work the players do, but you don't get the credit of playing on game day for the most part. But I love it. I wouldn't trade it for anything. Being on the team, getting to travel around and play in cool arenas, experience high-level coaching, creating that brotherhood. I really took it upon myself, though, to be like the team morale booster in a way. I made sure everyone was happy and tried to give energy and positivity to the team. And I took that on myself to be that kind of guy. And I think it worked out and we had some good success while I was there.
Speaking of taking on a role, how important is it for every player on the team to embrace whatever their role is that season?
It's huge. I think that's one of the hardest things, especially nowadays, like we talked about before the show with the transfer portal. Not every kid, because I think we have a lot of good kids on our team, but a lot of kids out there nowadays try to get their numbers and do what's best for them individually. So it's harder to get kids to buy into that role, especially when they can leave if they don't like the role they're in. So getting kids to buy into the team can be a little tougher, but if everyone buys into their role and they all do their part, you can have a successful team and win a lot of games, which I think here at Stetson this year we've been able to do. Everyone's bought into their role and doing their job to the best of their abilities. So if you can get players to buy into their role, it can really change the game for you.
I had TJ Bickerstaff on a couple of months ago, who plays for James Madison and actually entered the transfer portal twice prior to that. He talked a little bit about how the transfer portal has kind of helped the smaller mid-majors in college basketball. From a coach's perspective, how has the transfer portal, you think, helped to improve the game?
It's definitely helped improve. I get the transfer portal and why kids do it. There's a lot of kids that do it for the right reasons. Some happen with their university they didn't like, or their coach left, or academically they don't fit in, or socially they don't fit in, and they just need to change. But some kids out there just want to jump ships if one thing goes wrong. So I see both sides of it. I really do. But like you said, it has evened out the playing field. A lot of the mid majors are getting high major athletes in their program just because maybe that high major didn't play him as much as he would like. He wants to change and he goes to play at a low major, and turns out he's a lot better of a player than he was. So it's definitely evened out the playing field, like you said earlier, and can really change your team and change your program in 1 year just by going through the transfer portal and trying to get different players and see what happens.
Going back to Dayton for a couple of questions here. What was an important lesson that you learned from Coach Miller that you've taken into your coaching career?
Coach Miller, I think, was one of the most detailed coaches I've ever played for or learned under. Every pass, every cut, every screen, every movement, and his intensity, I think, was another thing. His defensive intensity and that side of the ball was one of the best I've ever seen. So just learning from him and his passion and obsession for the game, I think, is what really wanted me to get into coaching. I love that side of it, and seeing that side of basketball. Playing in high school, it's a totally different level going to college, and just seeing him and learning under him for 3 years and going to the NCAA tournament and seeing you can be successful with his style of play and his tenacity, I think elevated my love for coaching.
You just mentioned going from high school to college. How do you help your younger players ease that transition? Because it's not just to walk on campus and be successful for everybody.
There's definitely a learning curve. I mean, a lot of kids think just because I'm the best player in my high school team, I'm going to go in right away and be successful. I mean, it's tough though. You're playing against the best of the best in college. Every player is the best player in their high school team. So the sooner you can buy into the coaching staff and just learn and be a sponge instead of being a know-it-all and just thinking your way is the best way, I think those kids really take off and elevate quickly. The people that can just buy into the coaching staff, focus on the defense, and focus on everything else besides scoring, because scoring comes naturally. And if you can do everything else well, you'll be on the court and then you'll be able to score. But some guys just are stubborn. So it just depends on the player. But buying into the coaching staff and learning and being a sponge, I think, will really help kids transition the quickest.
In terms of being a sponge, what can kids do to better be that kind of player, to understand that they need to learn and they don't know everything?
Coming out of high school, there's so much more to the game. I'm not saying high school coaches are bad, but in college, it's like a full-time job for these coaches. There's 9 or 10 coaches on the staff. You get way more time with the kids. You have to go to weightlifting. You have to go to training table. You got to go to practice. You got to go to individuals. I mean, there's just so much more time on the court and so much more detail that you have to buy into and learn. A lot of kids go through mental fatigue more than physical fatigue just because they're worn down from all the drills, all the meetings, all the film. So the kids that really love the game and want to learn and be that sponge, like we said, are the ones that usually are successful. You definitely have to really love the game because you're around it every day, and you got to be given extra hours even and do all the right things off the court. There's a lot that goes into it to be a good player than just showing up for 2 hours of practice and 2 hours for the game. You really got to put in that extra work and really study it and grind. So those kids probably take that extra leap and adapt faster than the kids that don't.
You mentioned the love of the game, and so I want to make sure I get this in. You made a 3-point field goal against VCU for what I think was your only 3-pointer in college. I'm sure you have a memory of that. Kind of take me through what led up to that, the shot, and kind of seeing the ball go through the hoop.
That was a fun moment. I think it was Christmas break, my family was there. I had a lot of people there in town cheering for me. The game was on ESPN2, I believe. So it was a huge moment. VC was a really good team, and we were struggling that year. So we were the underdog, but we ended up blowing them out. And I got lucky and got put in the game late. I shot a three before that one I made, and I bricked it. Like, gosh, I got to make the next one I shoot. And my teammates, every time I touched the ball, they stood up and were, shoot it, shoot it. So I caught it on the wing, and I probably shouldn't have shot it, but they were all yelling, shoot it. And I looked at the guy and I just shot it and I went in, and it was an unbelievable feeling. The student section started chanting my name. It was a great feeling. I remember like it was yesterday. It was awesome. And just seeing my teammates cheer for me. And one of the kids on the court actually tried to hug me at half court and tackle me. And I shut him off and said, we got to play defense, man. Let's go. So just me being the competitive guy I was, I didn't want to screw up on defense. So I was quick to run back and not celebrate too much.
That's got to be cool to have the crowd chanting your name because not every athlete gets that.
It was fun. I was smiling on the inside, but trying to keep a straight face on the outside. It was a good feeling, though, for sure.
After your career at Dayton, what made you decide to go into coaching? Was it something that you had figured out while you were there, or did somebody tell you, hey, you'd be a really good coach?
I think growing up in a coaching family, obviously, I've always loved the coaching side of things and going to my dad's practices and seeing him talk to his team and being around the game and the hours he put in. Just being a part of the team, I always wanted to stay involved in athletics in some capacity. And when I got to Dayton and like I said earlier, learning under Coach Miller and then a year under Coach Grant, seeing those two coaches and how elite they were and the cool places athletics can take you and the different arenas it can take you and the competitive spirit, being a part of the team, like I said, all those things. And obviously being around great students and great people made me want to be a coach. And I think that's kind of what led to it, me just growing up around the family and then me going to the University of Dayton and playing under two really good coaches and learning the game. And I think it just made me want to become a coach.
Coaching can be kind of a nomadic profession where you're there for a year or two, you go somewhere else. You kind of grew up like that as well, with your dad having different coaching jobs in different cities along the way. How hard is it to kind of keep moving and keep resettling in?
Yeah, it can be tough. I mean, just not being able to get comfortable where you are in the back of your head, knowing you could be out of here in 2 or 3 years, it can always be a little tough. But it really didn't hit me until you get married and then your wife is in there with you and she loves where she's at. And then, hey, honey, we got to move. That can be tough for sure, but that's part of it. She knows what she kind of signed up for. And being a coach's son, I kind of knew what I not signed up for, but I knew what I was in for. Being one of three boys, and we're all competitive, and we all love going to my dad's games and his practices and cheering him on the weekends. And it never really bothered us too much. We were lucky too, for the most part. He was pretty stable for a while, and there in Orlando and Tampa area. He sacrificed a lot and would drive back and forth from Orlando to Tampa and vice versa. So just seeing the sacrifice he went through and my mom and all that good stuff, we kind of understand what we signed up for, but we think the pros outweigh the cons. So it is what it is.
Your first job out of Dayton, I believe you went to Louisville, correct?
Correct.
What appealed to you about Louisville, maybe not just the university, but the city as well, perhaps over other opportunities that were available?
I was really fortunate. I had two really good opportunities I was deciding between. I went to Villanova actually and toured there and had an opportunity to be a GA there or Louisville. My mom and dad actually went to Louisville. They were kind of pushing me to go there. And Chris Mack, who was the head coach at Xavier, I met him and he was such a good dude and a great coach. It was his first year and it had been my first year. I just kind of wanted to go there and start with him and try to build something special and help him any way I can and do a good job and get my feet wet and learn under him. And I'm glad I did. It worked out. He was such a good coach and a great person to learn under. Obviously, we had really good success when I was there. We were #1 in the country for a few weeks. We beat some really good teams and playing in the ACC was unbelievable. So glad I did. I got a master's from the same school my mom and dad got a undergrad from. So it was pretty cool. And being able to be in that city, I had some family there. It was just a perfect storm for me. And it was a great decision. I'm glad I went.
And I don't have the Louisville schedule in front of me. Forgive the question. Did you get to go play in Cameron or the Dean Dome that year?
I did. I was there for 2 years. So we beat Duke at Duke, which is probably one of the most memorable wins of my career. That was exciting. And we actually beat North Carolina at North Carolina, and that was also awesome. We blew North Carolina, I think, by like 15. Duke was a battle, but both those wins were obviously awesome. Just to walk in those gyms and see the history and level of talent and to win those arenas was special for sure.
I had Rick Barry's son, Drew Barry, on a little while back, and he talked about the Cameron Crazies. What was it like just to see them in person?
It was unbelievable. I didn't realize how, I guess, small and historic and old that gym was. I expected the best of the best, but to walk in there and see the history and how small the gym was, it was crazy. And then the fans just piling in on top of you, it was unbelievable. It was definitely one of the coolest atmospheres ever playing in and seeing them point their fingers at the guy passing out of bounds and yelling. It was special. It was cool. But to win made it even that much better.
Recruiting as an assistant, is there kind of an art form to it? Because it always seems that there are some coaches, regardless of the sport we're talking about, that seem to be a little bit better at it than others.
Coach Jones, who's I think a really good recruiter, he always says, I don't recruit, I build relationships, which I think is key and true. You can see through the recruiters and the people who are genuine. He almost teaches us less is more, focus on less and just be genuine and build those relationships and learn about their families, learn about their high school coaches, learn about their AU coach, and just build those relationships. Obviously, it can be tougher now with NIL and transfer portal, obviously, but the better relationship you can build with the kid outside of basketball, I think can really give you an advantage. And that's one of the biggest things I've taken away from Coach Jones, learning under him. And I will always believe in that and stick with that.
Building on that, one of the things for me when I do interviews with people all along the way is trying to find something in common that you have with the person you're interviewing, or in your case, the person you're recruiting, because it kind of takes down a little bit of that wall and makes people feel a little bit more comfortable.
That definitely helps. Obviously, recruiting a region that you're from or playing under the same coach, or I know this guy or I know your coach really well, that definitely helps. That's a lot of it as well. So that's definitely important.
My family actually lived in Dayton from 99 to 2001.
Oh, wow. Really?
I spent Y2K in Dayton.
Oh, nice.
My folks lived in Bellbrook.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I was in Miamisburg, so I'm pretty familiar. I know exactly where Bellbrook is. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, Miamisburg wasn't very far at all.
Yeah, no, that was close, right up the street.
What made you decide to leave Louisville and I guess go back to the high school level for a little bit?
I don't want to sound like the pity story, but at Louisville, it was our second year. We were top two in the conference. I think we were second. We traveled all the way to Greensboro to play in the ACC tournament. We were ready to win the whole thing. The night before our game, we got sent home because of COVID. So it was that COVID year. We flew back home. We were warned that there's a chance someone on our team might have it. You're at your own risk if you want to stay and not come on the plane. It was definitely a scary moment for everyone. Get to the airport back in Louisville, and Coach Mack had to give a speech right there and say, don't know when I'll see you guys again. Good luck. Stay in touch. Sorry I had to end this way. He really didn't know what to say. It was a weird time for everyone. We kind of went our separate ways. I graduated from home on Zoom, kind of not knowing what was next with basketball or COVID or anything in the world. I was engaged at the time to my wife. She was going back to Dayton to be a PA student and go to school to be a PA, and I want to stay near her. And Chris Wright, who was a former Dayton player, reached out to me and said he's starting a prep school and I wanted me to be the coach. So it kind of worked out, perfect timing. And I just want to stay involved in sports and athletics. I love coaching and being around young men and trying to develop them. So it worked out, and I'm glad I did it. It was a great experience overall, and I wouldn't trade for the world.
Coaching at prep school and starting during COVID, how are you able to build those relationships with the players you were going to coach at some point, even though you didn't even know if there was going to be a season?
Yeah, it was tough. A lot of those kids felt like they were a little bit screwed with their recruiting and under recruited because of the COVID. And me and Chris went around and found the best 10 or 12 kids that we could find in the Dayton area, signed them up. We try to build the relationships with them as quickly as we can. Started practicing almost every day, trying to develop them and get ready for college. And it worked out. We had a really good team, went around and played a really tough schedule against some of the top high school teams. We played junior colleges. We played Division III JV teams and other prep schools. So we played almost everyone we could and tried to get them as much exposure as they can. Went to Big Shot Nationals and won that tournament. So that was awesome, the national tournament. So we had some really good success. But the best success is everyone on my team had a chance to go play in college. And I would say 95% of them went on to go play college. And most of them are still playing today, which is pretty cool. And I still follow them and see how they're doing.
What's the coach-player relationship like, whether the coach leaves or the player leaves? How does that relationship continue to grow?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on a little bit of both. It depends on the coach and the player. For example, my prep school, I try to talk to those kids as much as I can. Obviously, I don't get to talk to them as much as I would like to, but I still follow them all, see what they're up to, and follow their games and see how they're doing. It's pretty cool. We still DM on Instagram or text all the time. Texting and social media is awesome. It's easy to connect. So just staying involved in each other's lives and seeing how each other's doing and catch up when you can, I think it's huge. I really do love all the kids I coach in a different way, and I try to stay connected with them as much as I can and talk to them when I can, and vice versa. It's fun, and I like to see where life takes them.
I read that you were also a coach in the basketball tournament, I think for the Red Scare, I think was the team name. I hope I got that right.
Yep.
Kind of tell people a little bit about what the basketball tournament is, because I'm not sure as many people know what it is as maybe I think, even though it has national TV coverage.
It's one of the coolest basketball events of the year, especially the summer. It's a 64 team tournament consisting of alumni teams or teams playing for a cause. For example, our team is the Dayton alumni team. So we get 7 or 8 Dayton alumni and we get a couple non-Dayton players to play. And we all compete on ESPN for $1 million. It's a winner take all tournament. Only one team gets the money. So it's highly competitive. A lot of pros playing it. Former NBA players, Joe Johnson's played in it. Been some really high level players that play. A lot of overseas professionals, great college stars, very good crowds now. We play Dayton, Wichita. Wichita has over 5,000 fans at every game. We've had around 4,000 fans at our games. 64 teams, kind of like March Madness. Former pros that come back, play for a 2-week tournament, and try to win $1 million. So it's pretty cool.
With your college and recruiting duties, do you still have the opportunity in the summer to go do that?
Coach Jones has been really nice about it and loves the tournament and loves watching his coaches succeed and spread their wings and do their thing. So he likes to encourage us to develop as a staff, and he lets me go do that, which has been awesome. So last summer I got to go coach and still do my TBT, and he's plans to let me do it this summer, which is very cool. And he knows I went to Dayton and love Dayton, and he actually coached at Dayton for a year, so he understands the love for Dayton and lets me do that, which has been pretty cool.
How did the job opportunity at Stetson come about?
After a year of prep school, I really missed college. I wanted to get back into it and was trying my best to look around and find somewhere to go. Try to get back on at Dayton, but there was no spot. One of the assistant coaches there, Ricardo Greer, was very good friends with Donnie Jones. And one of my coaches at Dayton, my last year, Brett Comer, who's now the assistant at Stetson, we all just knew each other through grapevine. And I heard they had an opening, and Coach Jones called me and we talked on the phone, and he said, come on in for an interview. And I drove down and I interviewed, and he liked me enough and offered me a job, and the rest is history. So kind of just through relationships and people we both knew.
We talked about Dunk City earlier, and you mentioned Brett Comer. He was a prominent member of that team.
Yes, he was. I hope his magic rubs on the Hatters this tournament, so we'll see.
One thing when you're a coach that you have to deal with are injuries. Do you game plan for that when you have an injury? And how do you talk to a player to keep them from not having a mental crisis when they have one?
That's tough. Coach Jones did a great job just making everyone aware that you never know when your time's going to come. If you're not prepared when your time comes, it's too late. So just always staying ready is huge. Making every player feel important and practice hard and work hard outside those 2 hours of practice and just staying ready as much as possible, because you never know when your time's going to be called. We had an unfortunate injury with our star senior player, who's probably an all-conference player, Josh Smith. He tore his ACL last game of the year, sat out all summer, missed the first half of the year, came back for conference play, played about 8 or 9 games, and unfortunately tore his ACL again. It was devastating. He just started playing really well and was player of the week in our conference and was dominating. And to see him tear it really was a devastating injury for our team. But his energy and his love for the team and positivity has really helped us, I think, win these last 3 games. He's been great on the bench, coaching in practice and the huddles, and just trying to find his role on the team outside of playing. So he's done a great job, and injury is a part of the game. So when it happens, you got to fight through adversity and always battle and be ready for your next time.
Speaking of injuries, you had a pretty major injury as a kid with an arm injury. What did you learn from that that maybe has helped you be able to communicate with a player better who has a major injury, such as an ACL?
It's kind of like, it is what it is. You just got to keep going forward, and you can't control the past, and whatever happened. I mean, it's unfortunate, but there's nothing you can do about it. You just got to work hard and try to get back to being the best you can be with the circumstances you're given. So just fighting through and staying positive. I think staying positive mentally can be almost harder than anything. So just having that positive mindset and knowing you'll be okay and things will be better in the future is just part of the battle, and staying positive, I think, is the biggest thing.
With your injury, what was the rehab process like for you?
I was really young, so I mean, it was tougher just because it didn't heal all the way right the way I wanted to. I have a pretty crooked left arm, It's kind of a running joke in my family, unfortunately, but it is what it is. But it really hasn't affected me too much. Just a slight crookedness in my left arm. So good thing I shoot with my right and throw with my right, or else I could have been really in trouble. But it really hasn't affected me too much. Just looks a little funny when I try to straighten both my arms out.
Your quote kind of reminded me of a quote from a movie called Blazing Saddles. And he holds out one hand. He's like, yeah, but I shoot with this hand. And the hand starts shaking.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why I tell people I don't shoot a lot of left-handed layups.
Speaking of movies, how much do you not like the movie Airplane? Because I imagine people quote that to you every once in a while.
Yeah, I try to stay away from that movie. I've definitely heard a few quotes from that one. So all it is chirping. It's all good fun, though. I don't really get too offended by anything.
Just kind of looking forward a little bit. In 10 years, where do you see yourself?
10 years, hopefully I'm still coaching college basketball. The goal is to be a head coach one day, but as long as I'm still involved in the sport, get to be around good people and coach the game and give back to the youth and the young athletes and the young men, I'll be happy. I mean, being in college athletics is such a good feeling, and it's fun to be a part of a team, and that competitive spirit and helping develop student athletes is my passion. So as long as I'm doing that, I'll be happy no matter where I am. But definitely see myself coaching basketball and hoping to get my opportunity to be a head coach somewhere one day.
Last thing before I let you go, I hear you're getting ready to become a dad. How excited are you?
I'm very excited. My wife is 5 months pregnant. We did the whole boy or girl test and we found out it was a female. So the first Gruden female is on its way this summer, which is exciting. I know all the boys in my family are very excited to finally break the curse and get a female. So she's definitely going to be spoiled, but we're excited to have her and welcome her into this world.
Are you nervous at all about being a first-time parent?
Of course, but part of the fun. I think we're excited and ready for it and out for the challenge. So it'll be good, and good thing we have good people in our lives who's going to help us and get through it.
Coach, I want to thank you so much for joining the I Play 2 podcast today. This has been great. Your insight into the competitiveness about the Gruden family, your stories from the hardwood, and now being a successful coach. Best of luck in the tournament, and best of luck on becoming a new dad. Congratulations.
Thank you. A lot of exciting times coming up, and hopefully the Hatters can make that next Cinderella run. We're excited.